Hi everyone, it's Heidi from flutterbyheidi.co.uk. I'm Heidi Smith. I'm an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator based in the United Kingdom. Today I'm working with the beautiful new Happiness Abounds bundle. And this actually is part of a suite, but I'm just going to use the stamp and die set today. It's absolutely beautiful. It's got these gorgeous anemones and these lovely roses as well as super useful fonts that you've got in here with some super sentiments that would be useful for any sort of occasion. So from weddings to anniversaries to engagements, you name it. I think you could use it for pretty much anything. Yeah, so really good. It comes with some dies, and the dies cut out the images that we've got on here, as well as the images on some of the images on the DSP, and you can see here I've used this lovely background floral trellis here. Now I haven't lifted up, but these little leaves do partially die cut, and you can lift those up as well to add even more dimension. You've got fabulous edge trims here, including a really useful, like top of a notebook type one. If you're into your journaling and memory keeping, that would be so useful. I've used some new dies for this sentiment as well. So these are part of the stylish shapes. I've popped mine in here with the beautiful shapes dies. And for those of you who miss our lovely stitch shapes, these are fabulous, because what they do is when they cut an aperture, they cut a stitching on both the inside and the outside, so that you get these lovely shapes. And I've just got the sort of label ones here, but you've got 4 sizes of label. Hopefully you can see the stitching. Okay, let me keep it away. But the stitching on the edge, you've got 4 sizes of label, and then you've got 5 squares and 6 circles, so really useful. Then as you can see, we've got some lovely, these are these beautiful shapes dies. So across these 2 die sets, you've got so much versatility. So I would really recommend those for anybody who needs to add to something to their stash. What else am I using? I actually used, ages since I've used them, I've used a blender pen and some of our watercolour pencils. So as you can see, mine's in a really old styling, but this is the set of 13, includes Whisper White, and it's got the lovely Melon Mambo in there. So because there were anemones, I kind of went for the sort of, I love anemones, deep, rich colours. So I kind of went Gorgeous Grape and Fresh Freesia on this one. As you can see, I've just stamped the anemone on the inside in Highland Heather. You could use stamped off Gorgeous Grape. I've popped that up on some dimensionals to give it a bit more interest, and then I've added also some of our beautiful iridescent rhinestones as well, and those are great because they really do pick up the colour of whatever you're using them with. So having done purples, I thought I'd go for pinks. So I've gone for Melon Mambo for this one. So very straightforward. I've gone for just a 10th fold. So this is 14.5 by 21, scored in half at 10.5. Whatever your size happens to be. If you're in the US, obviously it's slightly wider and slightly shorter. But that's my card base in Blushing Bride. You then want a piece of, I'm going to use now Melon Mambo, and this is 9.5 by 14.5, and I'm going to use that lovely die to create a trellis. Now this is pretty much the first time I've used this. I believe there is a way of kind of lining this up to create a real background, but I'm simply going to die cut it once on the right here and once on the left. That way it leaves me a more solid panel in the middle for my flowers to go on. So let's just do that. Okay, so you can see here, there's my die cut piece. And it's got lovely little stuff, you know, kind of almost like little hearts as well in there. But it is a lovely one. I mean, I could have potentially probably popped that in there and sort of lined that up to create a whole panel. But as I'm covering the centre up, you know, we don't need to. So I'm going to pop that up in some dimensionals now, and the spaces in here are great because they leave us quite a good amount of space to pop some dimensionals in the centres of those panels. So I'm just going to pop one in the middle of those panels, and because it's quite sort of almost sort of a lace effect now, I'm just going to make sure I support that well. We don't want it sort of sagging, and also because it ends up with some texture and bowing a little bit because it's been through a die cutting machine. So once I've done those, I'm just going to pop another one top and bottom, and then I'm going to use my mini dimensionals just around the edge to support it a little bit as well. So as you can see here, I probably didn't support the corners as much as I might have done on my original sample because of where the die had cut. But you can see I'm just popping those into those little spaces just there. So I reckon I might just need another one in here and maybe another one down here. So now we can pop that onto our base. And you see it's so much easier when I actually do write on these, draw a line just to see where those dimensional backs are. Another way you can use it is to use your take your pick tool to get those off. I see several people do that, and you literally just kind of flick those off with the take your pick tool. I usually find I end up stabbing myself as much as the project itself. So it takes a few moments. But some people are really adept at doing it, and they kind of pick them up, and I'm like, wow. Let's go old school. Okay. Another way to check that you've got all of those off, if you haven't written on the back of them, is just to hold them up to the light, and you'll see a little bit of a reflection on those. So once you've done that, I always recommend when you're putting your layers on that you open it up. Because I've cut this to 9.5, we've got about a ½ centimetre, so I'm just going to line that up and hopefully get that centred. There we go. Okay, so there's my panel, which I've managed to do slightly skew. Okay, well, never mind, it is what it is. Okay, so let's do some stamping. You're going to need some scraps of Blushing Bride. I just need a scrap for that here. We're going to want some basic white scraps, so I just keep all my scraps in a container so that when I want to do it, some of these actually are basic white, some are probably whisper white. By the time they're coloured you won't notice. I've got some Granny Apple Green ink and some Melon Mambo, and then I've just got a sheet here of plastic which I'm going to use for my blending as well. Now these are photopolymer stamps, so I'm going to be suggesting you get your stamping pierce mat out, because that will help create a really good impression when you're stamping. So I've got my large floral image, I've got my smaller one, and I've got my leaves. And I'm in the middle of prepping projects. We're off to get together with some of the other demonstrators next weekend, and I've designed 4 projects. So a lot of my blocks are in use, ready for that. So tap 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 as usual, just pop that in. And there's our lovely, and isn't that beautiful? It's such a gorgeous image. While we've got that out, I'm going to just put that to one side, and then using that same one, I'm not going to stamp on there. Okay, I thought I'd got a piece of basic white. I haven't. So all I need to do is quickly grab some basic white, and this is probably not quite the right size, because I generally keep a 1/4 sheet in here, but I can trim it down. So while I've got this out, I'm just going to stamp that in the corner there, and it doesn't matter that it's dry slightly, because it just gives that beautiful sort of faded image. That stamp will now be stained, just to make you aware. You don't need to worry about it. It doesn't affect the quality of the image for future. It just means it's going to be a bit brighter. There we go. So So I need 2 or 3 of those. You see I've used a couple of those. I've already done one image, but I've just done an extra one there. And then with the leaves, I'm just coming in with some Granny Apple Green. So I've got another piece here. So again, just stamp those leaves. Now, I've got one of my blending brushes here, so I'm just going to dab that in. And I'm going to pop my pieces of card onto, as I say, it's just a piece of sort of hardish plastic. And then having dabbed that in my ink, I'm just going to come in and just use my blending brush to add some colour to that. Add as much or as little as you want. Let's pop that away. You know me, I'm a messy crafter. You see I've got ink all over me already. Then just same again with the pink, but just come in and it just gives you a bit of variation. Also, it does mean that if you haven't got the blends in the right colour, but you've got an ink pad, you can always get some colour into it. The other thing I'm going to be using is a good staple of mine, which is the blender pen. And if you're starting out, or even if not, if you haven't got a blender pen, grab yourself a pack. They are really good value, and they do enable you to do a lot of different colouring techniques with different, as long as you've got an ink pad in that colour. So now what I'm going to do is I'm coming in with my Melon Mambo pencil, and I'm just adding to the edges of those petals a little colour. And you'll see I'm not being at all precise there. It is just adding a bit of colour. And just sort of adding a little bit around and about. But it's a way of, because they all coordinate, you end up with lovely shading. So I'm just kind of going in to sort of the edges of those petals as well. And because I've actually stamped in colour rather than in memento, first of all you get a lovely coloured flower anyway. But then you can just come in and blend with your blender pen, and you'll hopefully see that's just adding a little colour. Like so. So it's picking up a little bit of the ink from the watercolour pencil, it's picking up some from the edge of the flower, and so you get sort of some multi-toned flower with very little effort at all. There are some fabulous people out there who do gorgeous colouring. So this is, quite rough and ready in comparison. But you can see here, as I'm going round, it's just picking up a little bit of that pink from the outside edge. So once you've coloured it, do the same, or rather, you're not quite doing the same. What I'm doing is I'm just using the blender pen on this smaller flower. Just kind of going around the edges, because if you think naturally where those edges, those petals join is where you'd get a little bit of shadow. So that's kind of what I try and do. And then you can just pop the dies on there. So with the dies, no surprise, I'm using a bit of post-it note there because I'm putting more than one down at a time. But the dies do work fabulously well, as you can imagine. Just line them up with the outside of that image. So with the Stampin' Up dies, you should be able to see the image all the way around. So just turn it till you can, and then you should be able to see the edge of that flower. And I would recommend you stand up while you do it, because particularly when you're sitting down, I tend to get it offset. Pop it through your die cutting machine. If it goes through your cut, if you've got a cut and emboss, fantastic. If you've got a big shot, they will work just as well with that. With the detailed die, it works fabulously with the cut and emboss. I find if I'm using my big shot, I probably need to put it through with a very slight shim. And as you can see, there we go. Those flowers and those leaves are just going to pop out like so. So now we can start sort of shaping some of those as well. So I've got some more that Blue Peter moment, some more that I created earlier. So I'm going to trim this down now. Then we can start building up our card. So this needs to come down to 10 by 14. I've now found my piece of card that I had got to one side. I'm going to pop that on the inside of my card, just with some seal. Again, it's flat, it's not doing any movement, so seal is perfect adhesive for that. And you can see, just make sure you put it in the right way up. And obviously can't centre things today. There we go. And what I'm going to do is I will come down afterwards and trim that narrow bit off. In fact, let's do that now. I'm just going to come in with my scissors. Because I managed to take it off to one side, I'm just going to, and hopefully it won't be quite as noticeable. Okay, now with my flowers, I'm going to grab my, wafting my hand about there, just going to grab my bone folder and add a little bit of dimension to those. So I'm just stretching the fibres, giving them a little bit of shape. I completely messed up the die cutting on that one. There we go. And this is something I tend to do. Just putting, you don't have to use a ball tool or anything, just your bone folder to give a bit of shape to them. And I'm going to turn all of those over and we'll add some dimensionals. So on those larger ones, I'm just going to add a couple down the centre. And then I'm probably going to use some of my mini dimensionals on the leaves and just a single dimensional on here. So what I haven't done yet is stamp my sentiment. So that is probably something I ought to do. So I've just got the happy birthday sentiment from the same Happiness Abounds stamp set, and using those lovely stitch shapes, I'm just going to pop that in the middle there. Just hold it for a second. There we go. I didn't use my Stampin' Pierce hat. I mean, you'll still get a fabulous image even if you don't. I just find it is generally a little bit better. And so these are new in the current catalogue. So all you need to do is 2nd of May, pop your order in. Please do remember to use the host code if you can, if your order's up to 150, because that really does enable me to send you some extra little goodies as well. If your order's over 150, then obviously grab the rewards for yourself. 10% in freebies, and there's some beautiful new stamp sets as well. So I'm just going to pop those leaves in there like so. I'm going to add my dimensional onto the end there, and then I'm going to use a little bit of wet glue on this end here, because what I don't want to do is build up any more dimension on that, so I want that to be flush across the top there. So I think that's probably enough. I think those 3 flowers look absolutely fine with those couple of leaves. So all I'm going to do now is grab my rhinestones. I take your pick and let's pop. I keep saying this. I'm going to start to use more bling. I sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. But you know what? I'll try. You have to send me reminders. If I don't use enough bling, then give me a shout. Say more bling required. But these ones I think are really pretty. They remind me of the opals that we had. We had some beautiful opals as well. So everything, something with the iridescence just appeals to me. So there we have a pair of really pretty birthday cards using the new Happiness Abounds stamps and set and dies. As you can see, pretty decorated on the inside. Do the same on the envelope. And if you'd like to purchase it, pop along to my shop at flutterbyheidi.co.uk, my blog .co.uk, and you'll find the links there, or you'll find the links in the video below. If you can support me, it is really appreciated, because it does help me produce videos that hopefully you will enjoy and continue to enjoy free of charge. So thanks for watching. Come back and see me soon. Bye now.